I'm the Vice President for Facilities, Design, and Operations. Also wear the hat of the University Architect. Been fortunate enough to be here. Now, just finished 23 years, class of 1982, 81, before they held us back in the School of Architecture for that extra year. And proud resident, lifetime resident of South Bend, Indiana. And grateful to have had two sons graduate from Notre Dame, one in 2011 in biology and geology. This is a kid that first day he saw Barney, fell in love with dinosaurs, and 2 weeks ago just attended his I guess, commencement as a PhD in vertebrate paleontology at the University of Texas, pursuing his dream. Oh, thank you. So at age 30, he met his lifetime goal, and the next day was back in the field at the Petrified Forest National Park, looking for that next fossil. The other son graduated in 2014 in, of all things, architecture. And I guess he didn't quite get it, but yeah, he's doing well in Carmel, Indiana. So really glad you're with us. And most of all, my job is to welcome you home. I mean, we all live in a different place and come back to Notre Dame in so many different ways, but particularly a reunion weekend is always so special. I hope you feel like you are home, even though there's a lot of change that's happened since certainly you graduated, but certainly maybe since the last time you visited campus. Might have been as recent as last fall at a football game. But hopefully you feel like you're still welcome and that this is indeed still home. I don't think you can have a conversation about the future of Notre Dame without reflecting on its incredibly rich and tradition-filled past. And I like to do so in the form of talking about the three great builders that preceded us. And no conversation can begin that way. That conversation can't begin without talking about our founder, of course, Father Soren. What a vision this man had for the university. Came here, as Father Ted once said, with a lot of gall, $300 in his pocket, a broken down ox cart, and 6 Holy Cross brothers, and didn't call it a college, didn't call it a school, but he said we're going to build a great university in this very humble place. What a vision from that point forward. A few years later, after 1842, this is the second main building. That was the epicenter of the campus. You could see the church that precedes the current basilica to the left on those same foundations, or at least that same footprint. This is where all the university activity took place. This is where the students slept. This was the dorm. It was where the faculty taught. It's where the students took meals. And it's the little fledgling administration was housed. And of course, we know famously in 1879, that spring, that April, a roofer's torch making a repair on the roof went awry, and a spark led to the demise of the building. And within a few hours, it was just ashes. Soren was not there at the time. He was in Montreal ready to take another transatlantic trip to Le Mans, France, ask for more resources to continue to grow Notre Dame. A couple of day ride by messenger got the word to him very quickly, as quickly as possible, that the university was in ruins and all hope was lost. So he saddled up, came quickly back, walked among the ruins and saw the distraught faces and took immediate accountability. We talk about a lot of accountability and extreme ownership these days. He was the absolute model for that, where he said, "This is my fault." I said, "Father, you weren't even here. How could it be possibly your fault?" And he said, "This is the Lord speaking to me that I've dreamed too small. And I really needed to take the building down, and from these ashes, we'll truly build a great university." I mean, I give this talk a lot, and every time I reflect on that, the hair on the back of my neck still stands up, because he rallied everyone. In a matter of a few days, the students that hadn't left yet, the faculty, the brothers of the order, the priests, the sisters of the Holy Cross, the few townspeople that were in the South Bend environs at the time that were available, rounded them up and began to make brick. Made brick from the marl of St. Mary's Lake, a mud-bottom lake that the glaciers left behind, the Duloc, He thought it was one lake because of the snow-covered nature of November of 1842. But they began to feverishly make bricks and made 4 million bricks that summer. He felt he needed to reopen the school by September because if you lost a whole cycle of an academic year, maybe nobody comes back and the dream expires. And so from those ruins, with that kind of marshaling of labor, building those bricks, rebuilt the core of the main building to what we know now. Not the dome and the rotunda that supports it, not the wings that are off to the sides, but enough to have classes, to house students, and to bring the faculty back by that fall. I love this photo. This is actually a few years later. It's a sidebar. The church that preceded the current basilica actually burned down a couple of years before the main building. But it wasn't as urgent of a need in terms of running the university, and so not a lot of funds available, so it took a long time to rebuild that church. And in fact, this shot is mid-1880s, and the church still isn't done. Hadn't finished the steeple. He ultimately bartered with the local contractor, trading tuition for the work to finish that steeple. But the best part of this photo to me is really about the vision that Soren had and what gall it took to build these two structures. Look how humble of a condition everything else is in. These are just little barns, sheds for the livestock that supported the campus. Beyond this frame of photograph is essentially farmland. This was the ultimate farm-to-table place. This was a self-sufficient farm. All the crops and all the livestock that were raised here, and the students worked in the fields along with the order, were brought to here and fed the campus. You can see Washington Hall, the Performing Arts Center, built in the 1880s off to the right, named for Soren's favorite president. And what a vision it took to even think about a performing arts center. Felt that had to be central to the campus and to the terminus of Notre Dame Avenue. And of course, we know that that is a sacred terminus. The Notre Dame Avenue, 1 mile a lee from the main building steps into the city of South Bend, just as Soren had drawn it, remains our central campus planning focus to this day. We think every day about preserving Notre Dame Avenue, embellishing Notre Dame Avenue to make sure that when people turn the corner, whether for the first time or the 1,000th time, they get that tickle down the spine and say, I'm home. And what a remarkable experience it is to always see the Golden Dome with the Blessed Mother on top. This is a view from that perch about 100 years ago. The dome has been regilded about 10 times. Last in 2005, I'll show you that shot next. This was one of those times. It's real gold leaf, very thin, on strips of paper this big. It takes 2 people, one person to hold it, the other person to burnish it onto the tin backdrop of the dome, the actual shell itself. This was pre-OSHA, and so there wasn't a lot of safety. You see no scaffolding here. Who knows how they were really being suspended? But look at the view of campus. The campus stopped at the edge of South Quad, and there's those fields beyond. They had just taken the harvest and stacked the hay. To the right of the church, you see Soren College. Now we call it Soren Hall, but others still call it Soren College. It's called Soren College because it's the first residence hall in America, a building devoted strictly to a residence hall. And then beyond it, the next dorm, Walsh. To the left is Crowley with a roof, a 3rd story actually. In the development of many experiments, and particularly of artificial rubber that occurred in that building, there was another accident. A flame went bad and burned the top floor off. They did not have the funds then to replace that, and that's why Crowley is just a 2-story building to this day. And then the other science building to the left, La Fortune, that was built right after the fire of 1879 because Father Zamm's entire collection and research went up in flames and felt like, I don't want to go through this again, I need my own science building. And so that was constructed in Crawley soon thereafter as another science building. But in essence, the campus was this. And then to the very, very far right, just past the steeple of the basilica, you see some farm buildings where about South Dining Hall or maybe Dillon is today. Those are just barns that, of course, were taken away in the 20s. This is the view in 2005. So from that very humble beginning, the main quad, the avenue going into the farmland, eventually connecting to the little village of South Bend, and this French village grew up. You know, what a perspective. And it is something that we're mindful of all the time in terms of trying to keep Notre Dame in this sort of feeling of this village, even though programs push scale and size of buildings to something beyond maybe a village size. I claim that the second great builder of the Notre Dame campus is Knute Rockne. You can only attribute one building to him, of course, but Rockne is a sort of interesting visionary. He started as a student in chemistry, graduated, became a member of the faculty. All along, played football under the very first Notre Dame football coach, Jess Harper, learned the game, quickly became an assistant and eventually the head coach, of course the athletics director, and realized the power of branding before we even knew there was a term called branding. He knew that people wanted to play this scrappy group of Irishmen that used a derogatory term to call us the Fighting Irish, but he turned it into a positive, continued to motivate our team, but also got the headlines. He'd play anybody anywhere, and he did. He took the team on the road through the train system to the Polo Grounds, the Yankee Stadium, out to the West Coast, played in the Coliseum, played in Soldier Field, packed the house with 120,000 people, and played the great teams of those eras, and beat them most of the time. But he couldn't get anybody to come play us because the revenue in those times only came from the gate. There was no advertising, no TV contracts. So this little crackerjack box of a stadium here on campus, Cartier Field, only sat 10,000 in wood bleachers. Eventually been scabbed onto, maybe ultimately we got up to maybe 30,000. But that wasn't going to be enough as the home of the Fighting Irish. And so he went to the administration multiple times in the 20s to try to get resources to build Notre Dame Stadium, and he was repelled most of the time. There were other needs, more important needs, but he persevered. He pushed the idea that we need people to come to South Bend, to come to our campus so that they'll understand this mission of this unique university. And as we graduate our students, to have them come back. And you know, to this day, we have a reunion weekend, but it's not associated with a football game. We don't have a homecoming game because every game is homecoming. It's one of the reasons we come back, but it's not the singular reason. Yeah, we like it when Notre Dame wins. The food is a little bit better tasting after the game, and maybe the beer is colder, but all's not lost because we came back home. Sometimes we come home as early as Wednesday or Thursday before that game, and we leave after Mass on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. But it's a ritual, and it is something that's very special. I think myself and others really lay the responsibility for building that at Rockne's feet, and thankfully he did. Here's the stadium just as it was finishing construction. It took 9 months to build this. 2 million bricks. I've been held to this standard ever since in terms of speed of construction. But it was remarkable. He played the 2029 season, the latter part of that season, the part of the 30 season away in order to get the building built in time because it was on top of where Cartier Field was. This is the inaugural game. So people came from here and far to fill, at the time it was about 56,000 seat stadium, built off the model of, hate to say it, University of Michigan's Michigan Stadium. But Michigan Stadium's had a little bit different topography. That was built in a hill. It did not have that beautiful wall that circumnavigates Notre Dame Stadium that's still there today. And if you came to a game last year, you saw how we celebrated that with lighting, cleaned it, and many of the other sort of icons we added to it. Unfortunately, there was no such thing as tailgating at this particular point in time, because this would have been like the ideal golden years. Look at how proximate everybody was. You see to the west of the stadium was a road called Eddy Road, a continuation of Eddy Street. That was part of just the county grid. Rockne, you could almost imagine in his convincing Father O'Donnell to build the stadium is, we're going to put that off campus. In fact, we're going to put it on the other side of the road. Don't worry about it. It'll be a background building. Look at how far it is away. And now how we engulfed it. We wrapped around it in ways that maybe no other campus has embraced their stadium. In fact, as campuses grew and knitted together with other stadiums, they took those buildings down, either built one remotely or like in a metropolitan area, playing in a professional stadium, and they bus their students and their fans away from campus for that game. We don't do that here. We're not going to take Rockne's house that he built down. In fact, what we've done is celebrate it and triple down on it in terms of bringing in these other entities. I hope you've had a chance, if you're not, get through the Duncan Student Center today, for instance, and see how active it is. The students aren't here, obviously, so it's not as active as we normally see it, but it's incredible in terms of the energy in that building. A new student center we've never had, the restaurants filled, the students studying, the career center on the 5th floor, the rec centers on 3rd and 4th floor, the music building to the south, and the Corbett Family Hall, which is full of the academic departments of psychology, anthropology, and the new digital media center, and a new classroom on the east side. So we give Rockne a lot of credit. We're really enhancing and taking his image from the very beginning and celebrating it. Of course, the last of the three great builders has to be attributed to Father Ted, often called the second founder of the university. Here he is at the groundbreaking of the building that eventually bore his name, or bears his name, the Memorial Library. I love this photo in progress, being erected on what was Vettville, this sort of outland parcel of campus, in alignment with the stadium, not by coincidence. Here it is topped out. What, again, goal it took to think about building the largest college library in the world at Notre Dame. 500,000 square feet. The tallest building between Chicago and Detroit at the time. Coming out of the post-World War era, we did not have a lot of funds here. But Father Ted saw the need to grow the academic mission as he assumed the presidency in 1952, and felt like the center of that really had to reside in the library. And it's been an absolute core mainstay, as libraries need to do at any college campus ever since. What a vision it took to build this, and then to put the Lord's image on it. Not real popular in the early 60s maybe to do that, to live your mission in true architecture and art for all the world to see, especially in alignment with the stadium. I mean, that's fantastic. It's the backdrop of the happiest day, the most important day of the year at Notre Dame, commencement. This is payday for everybody, and it's probably the most photographed background. We probably all remember what the library was for many years, 50 plus years. It housed books, a lot of tables and chairs, and a lot of quiet. No food, no drink, and it's changed. And again, during the course of your time here on campus, if you've not been through it, or maybe on future trips, take a walk through. We're in the midst of a $47 million makeover, if you will, particularly of the first and second floors, the more publicly accessible floors. This happens to be one of the stacked floors that we've modeled and built. You can still see we have books, but we cleared the core out of the middle and then have these work areas. We shot this before we let the students in, but this is the busy little hub. You could talk now in the library, above a whisper. And you can actually have coffee and soft drinks and food and that kind of thing, because we want the library to attract everyone, faculty, students, staff, and to work in a variety of different environments, very much digitally based, because the world's changed. We don't use books so much. In fact, the university bought an old beer warehouse on the edge of town by the airport, converted it to dense, packed, movable shelving, and we've moved about 1.5 million volumes out of the library and into that building. It's about a 15-minute drive away. Now, if a faculty member has to have that book rather than the scanned version that's online, we'll get it to them within the day. But most of the time, that's really a repository for, what if we needed to have that hard copy. So we've moved out half the volumes out of the library in order to put in technology, because this is how we learn, this is how we teach. And we do so in groups, just like these young men are demonstrating. And they're learning how to research, how to find information, how to write their papers. And there is a staff of librarians and faculty dedicated to the library to teach students how to find that information, how to write that, how to use the technology, some of the unique software. And actually, faculty come into the library to learn those same things as we transition from a hard copy world to a digital environment. There's all kinds of teaming spaces, and there's still good old-fashioned dry erase boards, so that kids working in collaboration. Let's face it, we work now in all of our jobs in collaboration. Very, very few of us work solo. So we learn now together in collaboration. We learn as a group. There's not so much lecture anymore in class as this room suggests, but more the assignment is to read or see the lecture taped ahead of time and then come to class and talk about it. It's called the flipped classroom. So we have some of those in this building. We also added a lot of lights. We cut in a skylight into the second floor roof. We cut an opening into the second floor itself so we get daylight in the middle of this huge footprint, and we put doors on the north end. Because when the library was built, there was nothing beyond it, except just the remnants of Vettville. Now we've got this huge sort of residential neighborhood up towards the Flanner and Grace originally, and then the other Mod Quad dorms. So quite a metamorphosis. Father Ted, and of course with Father Joyce at the helm as well, was a prolific builder. In 35 years of leadership, they built 43 buildings and about 3 million square feet. So tremendous growth in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. Let's devote the rest of our time together before we take questions about what's happening on campus today. So I've panned our view down to the southern edge of campus, where there's been probably the most development, certainly over the last 15 or 20 years. And you can see, just to orient you, Angela, just at the very edge is the beginning of Eddy Street Commons, which has been a tremendous addition and a knitting together of campus and community. You see the sort of white roof building is the Compton, and then obviously the stadium and the Joyce Center. This shot's about a year old, this aerial. So in the last, I'd say 36 months, the last about 48 months, we've opened 1.2 million square feet of new buildings. And on the south side of campus, most of those occurred in the Duncan Student Center, O'Neill Hall. Corbett talked about those. Jenkins Hall and Nanovic Hall on Notre Dame Avenue. It's the new entry building as you come up Notre Dame Avenue, and new homes for our social sciences, as well as our new School of Global Affairs. And that has opened to a great success. At the edge of campus, our Innovation Idea Center continues to just flourish. The amount of new businesses driven out of research and ideas that come from campus and from the South Bend region are birthed out of and developed out of the Innovation Park. And so Quinn Family Hall opened up. It's a new wing, and it's quickly filling up. And so we actually have some building pads for additional innovation growth there. What's happening now was I've just shown now in yellow. And so Walsh Family Hall, I'll show you some images of that. That's the new School of Architecture moving out of Bond Hall at Christmas time. And then new sites below it for art history, and design, trying to raise some money for that. And we're now fully funded for the Racklin Murphy Art Museum. We'll start designing of that building soon. We have a new residence hall under construction just off the map to the left. That's west of Ryan Hall. A new McKenna Hall, you probably saw recently announced. The old CCE served us well, but it really needs to be modernized, and probably best to actually take it down. So a year from now, we'll actually be starting to close that building up and start then in the fall of 19, a new facility. A new indoor football and soccer practice facility. I'll show you a shot of that. And then the new Harris track and field facility with some bleachers and student athlete locker space. This is unfortunately from my webcam a washed out shot of Walsh Family Hall. This is the east elevation. You see the Performing Arts Center in the background. This is a better view of it in the rendering of its finished state. So I'm often asked a couple of questions. Why the two different colors of brick? The first piece is I'll say the red brick. It's where the studios are. And you'll note the design of this building is not collegiate Gothic, but it's much more of a classical building, along the lines of a Crawley Hall or a Bond Hall. So very different from collegiate Gothic, but still traditional. It's not a modern building. We felt we could do that, number one, because we really needed to. This is what our School of Architecture teaches, and that's why it's world class and world renowned. It's why students from all over the world come, get an incredible education here. We still sketch and teach by hand, remarkably. We forestall getting people on AutoCAD and the computers until 4th or 5th year, and that's really at their option, at their discretion. And our students are in huge demand because they can talk and can sketch at the same time. And sitting down with a client for the first time, it's not a place for a computer to be inserted in the middle of that conversation. They could take paper and sketch out, just as us oldsters did many years ago. And so that's happening in that building, the yellow or the red building. And that brick is somewhat inspired by the South Dining Hall, kind of a unique color of campus brick, and has its roots sort of in that Georgian classical style of architecture that building represents. And then to the right is the tan brick building. That's where the library is for the School of Architecture. And that brick really is inspired by the original Soren brick, the brick made from the marl from the lakes. There are some unique features. To the very far left is a little Greek temple. That's where the Hall of Casts are. That's where antiquity is shown. It will be on display. Really back to the roots of classical architecture, which is the root of all architecture, where the Greeks and Egyptian and Romans were inspired and designed buildings. Then there's this cute little tower that is meant to be like a campanile in many Italian piazzas. It's just a focal point. It has no function other than have a little light at the top as a beacon to suggest something important is happening here. And so you see a little piazza, in fact, where the students and staff will come out. And it's going to be really open to the public as well as we enjoy getting outside. Here's the new men's residence hall. This will open in the fall of 2019. As you probably have read, we're having an on-campus residency requirement through the junior year starting in 3 years. And so we need this hall, men's hall, and the new women's hall, I'll show you momentarily, to fulfill that bed count need. This is the new indoor football and soccer practice facility. Are pretty much very much inspired by kind of that Art Deco style you see celebrated in many of our stadia structures along Leahy Drive, and certainly exemplified in the detailing of the Crossroads buildings, but with a lot of glass to help get daylight into this space. I think it's going to be a fantastic addition to campus. It's going to free up the Loftus Center for all the other sports, and particularly rec sports, and the marching band for inclement weather days. So I've panned our view now to the north part of campus. You see the library kind of off center, but close to it, and then just across ways, the top is the Golden Dome. So what we've completed over the last couple of years is this beginning of a new quadrangle. It's kind of an L shape with this thin bar north-south, and then it's going to extend further east, as we've suggested here. McCourtney Hall is our new research building for many of our biological and engineering, chemistry sciences. And then 2 new residence halls opened 2 years ago, Dunn Hall and Flaherty Hall. And then I've highlighted over to the left Baden Hall. It's a building we've just renovated. We're taking dorms down for 9 months at a time now because we're investing more in renewing them. Last year it was Walsh Hall. This year it's Baden. And this coming year it will be Morrissey. We take them down after the camps have left for the year, before school starts, and we close them off. We use Pangbourne as a swing hall. We move the community into there. And we do a very thorough renovation, $9–10 million worth, new piping, new bathrooms, replace all the finishes. And in case of Baden, had a gift to add a chapel. We had a very just tiny little chapel in that building before, not enough for the whole residence hall community, and so have added a chapel. You'll see that as you walk around on campus during your time this weekend. And I'll walk you around some of these other projects that are also happening at the moment. Here's the Baden Hall with new windows, just cleaned the brick, and then you can see a poor shot of the chapel extending out, kind of hexagonal shape a bit, and then this is taken right before we started working on the landscaping. Part of the particularly building community in women's halls is centered around food in the kitchen. And so what we try to do is add a kitchen to the floor of every women's residence hall, both new and old, because they're just so popular. We want to get the kids out of the rooms and into more social space, whether it's the chapel, study space, relaxation, gaming space, or even kitchens. For the guys' halls, just one kitchen is enough. Main floor, and in observation in sight of the rector, so there's some adult supervision. This is the shot to the right is of a finished corridor. And so you get a feeling of sort of refreshed nature. The rooms are all refreshed, new sinks, new medicine cabinet, new lighting. So they have the same creature comforts that we have in new halls, aside from air conditioning, which is almost prohibitive in terms of how to fit it in to these older structures. So I mentioned before, after this summer, we will close Morrissey. We're going to move that population into Pangbourne and do a comprehensive refit. There's always a Morrissey person shouting out, "Yep, there we go, Jim's a Morrissey guy," so long overdue for this great building. You've also probably heard about Corby Hall and the university's commitment to the order to continue to maintain it. Corby is a building actually owned by the Congregation of Holy Cross on their property, but the 1967 agreement that established a lay board of trustees gave the stewardship responsibility to the university for the care of this particular structure. And I think we've done a good job over the years, but as we think about the needs for the next 50, 100 years for the order, the building is just probably beyond its service life. And so through a series of conversations with the order, decision was taken, it's probably best to take it down and then replace it with a building that looks very much like the existing. And so literally a Monday, the fence goes up around the building. We'll do the hazardous material abatement effort, and then within a couple of weeks, we'll begin to take it down. We're going to save quite a bit of the brick and use it for repair of existing buildings that still have that original brick. The new brick will be very much inspired by that original handmade mud brick. In fact, here's a rendering of the elevation. What's a little bit different about this particular design is that there will be a 2-story porch on the front of the building rather than one, because there's some common area on the inside of the floor plan So it's really allowed us to free it up. We've moved the chapel. The chapel won't have any columns in it. We put the dining in the ideal location, modernized the kitchen. And in fact, the very far lower left, there's an overhead door. There will be actually an underground parking garage for 30 cars for the order. As you walk around, especially if you're walking to the grotto, you encounter a lot of cars and some very awkward grades on the north end of the building. That'll all be straightened out. There won't be any cars there, and you can see this little nice walkway path with the retaining walls. It'll be much better for campus and much more appropriate feeling as one is in this area, just a few yards away from the grotto. It'll take about a couple of years to build, and so in the spring of 2020, we'll move the community back in. I'll talk next about the new women's residence hall. It's destined to be at the north end on axis of this new outdoor space, at this new quad. And in fact, we're putting the axis right on the chapel, which is in the lower left, and just, I think, appropriately using that as the center point. And a community of about 230 women will move into here. This is a funding dependent thing. As you probably know, the university doesn't proceed with any major capital project without having the money already in hand. So 100% of it has to be committed, and 75% of it actually received before we put a shovel in the ground. And so we're hoping that Lunani and his team are successful in identifying benefactor for the building so that we could start some of the preliminary work as early as this fall. This is the new indoor practice facility. It's one of the courts for the men's and women's program that will share the Rolf's Athletics Hall building. As you probably are aware, we took the recreational sports component out of this building in January, moved it into the new Smith Center rec center in the Duncan Student Center on the west edge of the stadium, and then allows us to repurpose this building for men's and women's varsity basketball. And there'll be a lot to celebrate in here, obviously, particularly with the second women's national championship. But important tool for our basketball program, something long sought. This will be ready by fall, in time for the upcoming season. This is actually just a little bit off the edge of the map view I showed before. This is, of course, the marching band practicing on their new practice facility. This is Ricky Fields, right off of the edge of Steppen Center, not far from Stinson Rugby Field. You see the golf course in the distance past the road. Why I put this on is because it's a great new feature, having 3 new artificial turf fields for rec sports, for the summer camps, for our just day-to-day dorm activities, the football games that we have from dorms. You know, great tradition. That grass always got worn out by this time of the year. And so now with artificial turf, we're able to make it last and essentially maintenance-free. But what's particularly interesting about this project is that underneath it are about 1,000 wells, 300 feet deep, dug to get product heating and cooling from the Earth's temperature, which is always 56 degrees Fahrenheit below like the first 4 feet or so. And so these rigs, about 18 months ago, dug these wells before we put the artificial turf on. The top of the wells are about 5 feet below the surface, and we're now just finishing up connecting all that product to go into an east plant. I'll show you in a moment, to take that low temperature heat and also reject heat into the earth during the cooling season from a renewable energy standpoint. We did the same thing underneath the parking lot 2 summers ago, south of the stadium. So where we tailgate game to game and where we park every day is a geothermal well field. And that product, that temperature, low temperature heat and the cooling goes to the Walsh basement of the Walsh Architecture Building, where that will be converted to use for that building, but also put into the campus network. So some really good renewable strategies. This is where the Ricky Fields product goes. This is the new East plant. If you've been on the north part of campus, you might see this into the woods a bit. There's a construction effort going on here. This will wrap up this fall. and we will add a little bit more of a landscape screening. But it allows us to answer the growing demand for utilities for campus as the campus grows, but also in a renewable way. So trying to minimize the use of fossil fuels. Key to that strategy is also taking the energy created at the South Bend Dam. You can see to the left, Century Center, and the river traveling to the north. That dam is underutilized in terms of its hydropower. So the city has given us their permit, a federal permit that we're just now finalizing to allow us to build a bypass loop around to the right through that little park. And we're going to put 10 turbines through that, in that new channel. Water will be flowed through there, generate about 7% of our electric power, and we'll run the line dedicated right up into campus. This is the ultimate in terms of renewables, because the river always flows. In fact, sometimes it flows too much, and it's a single point source, so it's not on the grid, it's all to us. Part of our renewable strategies, which we have a very aggressive goal of reducing carbon output by our energy production. We'd like to get to 50% from 2005 levels by 2030. You can see we're well on our way to achieving that. The ultimate goal is to be carbon free. We're going to need some technology to help in the interim, but we're pleased with what we see on the horizon. I think there'll be a time that university will be in the solar array business, maybe on campus or at the edge of campus, even in the climate as sometimes cloudy as it gets. The technology is getting better and better to operate even with cloud cover, and it's also becoming far less expensive to do. Before I turn it open for your questions, I thought I'd just finish up with talking something about a couple of facilities off campus. Over the last 5 years, we've developed a new global gateway in Rome. Previous to this, we had a center for archies, and everybody else was sort of on their own. We built or renovated this palazzo 2 blocks from the Colosseum as the new Rome Global Gateway. It is all academic space, so our theologians go there, our art students, architecture, our scholars go here and are headquartered here in the academic building. And just this last fall, opened up this new small villa that was renovated for 91 beds for our students. So archies are now integrated for their accommodations with other students, both Notre Dame students and other international and American students in this facility. You can see we've put our signature on the little pavers in this little piazza that we own. We have lofts just like we have on campus, but certainly in a different environment, a nice kitchen in the building as well. So it's a great new addition, part of our international strategies to make sure our students are safe, but also very much keen to continue to travel and go abroad and have that experience in their life. So I'd be happy to, again, take a few questions before we close here. Yes, sir?
I've heard Pangborn is going to be torn down, and how about Fisher?
Yeah, I'm a Fisher guy myself. No imminent plans for that. But however, I think we are always being, trying to look forward, a little bit visionary, maybe like our predecessors, to think about what buildings will eventually need to be retired and replaced. And Pangborn and Fisher provide quite a bit of challenge for us in terms of how inflexible they are just by nature of the concrete block walls. We are investing in them though. Both are getting new roofs this year. So that'll buy quite a bit of time with them, but maybe we think our successors might want to target those as potential sites for replacement in new halls. And you might put Keene and Stanford in that basket too. But certainly nothing imminent. I think they're going to continue to service the university for quite some time. In the back.
You mentioned earlier in your presentation the phrase Vetville. Could you speak to that a little bit? I hadn't heard that before.
Oh, sure. Vetville it came about after the war for returning vets to have a place to stay, particularly with their families, as they got an education at Notre Dame through the GI Bill. people may not realize this, or some don't in the room, that the Navy and Naval Academy saved Notre Dame. During the World War II, of course, Notre Dame was an all-male institution. Where were most of the males? They were enlisting and saving the world. And so university's tuition revenue was virtually nil and on the verge of collapse. The Naval Academy was training naval officers at a rate that they could no longer sustain in Annapolis, and put a call out to the country. Where could we have a place that's already set up as a school, have great parade grounds, and call that as a second academy? And Notre Dame said, call us. And so I have some great archives photos of the drilling that went down South Quad in the 1940s. So that influx saved the university, and of course those people graduated with a Notre Dame degree in the midst of all that, and then came back, or they had a partial degree, I should say, and they came back and finished their degrees in this little series of wood-framed homes called Vettville that's on the site of the library and the library quad. There were hundreds and hundreds of people who lived there. Yes, sir.
I have two questions, if you would, Mr. Marsh. I've been to Hesburgh Library several times, and they direct you often to an observation window. It is the worst observation window I've ever been directed to. And I see you've corrected it with your new buildings, all of them, that have better views than it. So one, maybe you should make a little bigger window.
Where is that? I'm not familiar. I don't know if everybody heard the question. There's apparently on a library tour, you're taken to a point for an observation window. Oh, okay. Here's what I suggest. Go to the second floor. At the top of the stairs, there used to be, you were greeted by this wall of bathrooms. We blew those bathrooms out, now have a glass wall. You can see right down the library quad into the stadium. I think that's the way to do it.
My second one is, what's going to happen to the 9 holes of the old golf course?
Question was, what's going to happen to the old, used to be called Burke, but it's the Notre Dame golf course. No plans. In fact, if I have my way, we'll keep it green forever. I love that green band. I love the fact that our students can go out there and play virtually for free. Our retirees enjoy it. I could see us extending part of our renewable strategy and putting parts of an underground, more underground wells, and then put the golf course on back, because it's really an untapped resource. But no plans to expand the campus that way. I think at some point we just become too far and spread out. So I think selective replacement on the interior of campus with buildings that are sort of tired out is a better strategy than sprawling all the way to 933.
St. Ed's?
St. Ed's, a sacred building to us, part of the core. We continue to invest in that, just as Baden and Morrissey.
Rumors are going around that it's going to be torn down and replaced.
Please dispel those rumors. Yes?
It's not a question, but a comment. You told the story about how Rockne wanted to encourage the university to build a stadium, and then you jumped to, there's our stadium. I live in Ohio, big fan of Ohio State, did a lot of research, and the reason that Notre Dame built the stadium was because he was so frustrated that they wouldn't build a stadium that he actually was recruited by OSU to be their head coach. And when he came back to campus to try to resign, the school said, what would it take to keep you?
That's thank you for sharing that. I'm not going to try that strategy as the university architect. But at least there's one thing we can thank Ohio State for. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
At one point, I thought I read there was talk of moving main circle southward. Is that?
No. Oh, I love how these urban legends get started, or campus legends. So absolutely not. No, that's there to stay. I wouldn't know where to put it. There was at one point contemplation of a small little, you risked the word, roundabout at the intersection of Notre Dame Avenue and Holy Cross Drive, just to help calm that down. But I think that's even tight to put that in there. So I don't think there's an imminent plan to make any changes there.
What's in line for the Stebbins Center?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. It's my favorite building on campus. Because I'm also responsible for utilities and maintenance, and there's no other cheaper building to maintain than Steppen. It shows. Ouch. What's great about Steppen is it's still actively used. 400 events a year, mainly student events, in that building, and they can't hurt it. You know, there's barely any heat, there's no air conditioning, and we can hose it down. We've stopped the leaks, in all seriousness, so there's still it's a place for large section exams. So all the calc and the chemistry exams are still held in there. And all the different science projects still, they have bands on there Friday, Saturday nights. Occasionally, I think once or twice, we brought back to me, that's where all the pep rallies should be, is in the Steppen Center. So no plans to take it down. I do think we actually need to invest some more money in it. I don't know if you remember, you probably do. It used to be gold. It was painted gold originally, and it's lost its hair a little bit. I've suggested we go back and paint it gold, but I've been sort of suggested not to bring that up again. But I think it needs a little loving, but there's no plan to take it away because it serves a big purpose for us.
What are the future plans for Bond Hall?
Great question. I love that building. Seriously, that's between that and the South Dining Hall, my favorite buildings on campus, and it's where I spent certainly a lot of my undergraduate life. In fact, it was the first project to renovate that building in '95 when I came from private practice to take on a job here, was to renovate Bond, ironically. Bond is in moving condition. It's a beautiful home for someone. And it's likely that we will make it a home for a series of centers and institutes that particularly are focused on our undergrads. So some of our Merit Scholar programs are probably going to be housed in there. We have these grand, beautiful studios. They don't need to be carved up. They can be kind of collaborative space where kids in these programs can go. There's a few offices that will probably take academic departments that need a little more space and probably put them in there. But no comprehensive changes to it, but not probably one unit in there, but a series of different units that we're working closely with the provost on to probably within 6 months we'll have a firm plan. Yes, sir.
Can you speak to some of the big projects that are on the 20-year vision?
20-year vision. I'm not sure we look that far out when it comes to facilities because we really spin off of what the needs are from all the units, particularly the academy. As they refresh their strategic plans, that begets the capital needs. But I think what you see here is virtually everything that we've got on our plate. I think we've done building dorms for a while after the women's hall is constructed. I think the next generation will have to examine whether they're going to replace some of the more pragmatic halls built in the 50s or not. But I think now we're going to be transferring to more of a renewal and stewardship mode. So while we've experienced a lot of growth in a short period of time, I hope you feel like Notre Dame's always been growing. And there's a lot to truth in higher education. If you don't grow, you might not actually be thriving very well. And so there'll always be some growth here, but we think it'll be more intermittent and a lot more renewal and stewardship of what we have. Yes, sir.
That's almost the reallocation questions of what will happen to Raleigh and eventually the Snipe when the full art museum on the south side is built.
Did you, the first one was Crawley?
Not Crawley, I meant Raleigh.
Oh, Riley?
The art
Oh,
history.
yeah, Riley probably is a building that we would take down and replace it. Probably. I mean, no firm decisions, but it's just a building that's difficult to navigate if you have any kind of accessibility issues. There's so many different floor level changes in there. The systems are very dated. There's no air conditioning in the building at this point. So we probably can do a little better job there with that very, very special and precious site. Question about what would happen to the Snipe Museum once we have a new art museum. The art museum is actually going to be built in a couple of phases. So we have enough money to build the first phase, which is some more galleries and storage. I expect that the Snipe will still be there. And so you'll have a museum a bit bifurcated until there's a second phase, probably in the next campaign, to build out the new art museum. And so I think you'll end up keeping Knute there for quite a while.
And is the art history building funded or not?
It is not. Should I have Lou contact you? Or Yes, sir.
Could you explain the thoughts on the expansion of Eddy Street Commons and what the vision is for what's going to happen there?
Sure. It's always been envisioned from the get-go 20 years ago to have the full development out to 23, to South Bend Avenue. So that corridor is more vital. There's more people living there to populate the retail that exists. It's been very successful in phase one. You can see the last phase of phase one with the hotel being built. That'll open sometime this fall. I think they're working feverishly to get it ready. They're working on Sundays and et cetera. I don't think they're going to be ready for football season at the outset, but maybe by mid-September, I think the developer's thinking about. We went another 2 blocks down to that corridor, that connection to Eddy Street and South Bend Avenue to get that density up. So more apartments, some condominiums, and some flex retail, meaning there's not enough, they'll be set up on the first floor. You can have some office or retail in there if the market suggests, but if it doesn't, it's designed to be flexed into more residential. So we don't end up with a lot of empty storefronts and trying to avoid that. So that'll wrap up here in the next 12 to 14 months and have a real finished look there. And then I think Eddy Street's done. I mean, there's nowhere else to go. The things that helps spur, the development of single-family homes on Notre Dame Avenue and westward, the university's out of that business now. We primed the pump 20 years ago with offering people to buy those properties for us. We helped them design their homes. That's no longer needed anymore. That impetus, that took off as planned, and it's like wildfire. It's great to see. I think there's time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
I don't know if you can answer this. I just know that Venue ID's really been able to make use of the new buildings around the stadium. Do you know if they're going to do anything more with the stadium as far as community events or anything?
Yeah, great question. The question was, what else could be happening at the stadium in terms of community events? One of our aspirations from the outset of the reinvestment in the stadium proper was to make it a home for concerts. And so there could be an announcement as early as next week about a major concert this fall, this maybe even in August, prior to the season, hosting at Notre Dame Stadium. Which would really be cool. Can you imagine 85 or 90,000 people, 10,000 people on the stadium floor, sort of surrounding a stage? And so that's our aspiration. If we do it well, it'll become, in our vision, the next sort of Wrigley and Fenway Park. So draw people from around the country, particularly the Midwest, to experience Notre Dame in a different way. So many people hear about us. They don't really make the voyage here. Maybe they've just driven by. Maybe they've only experienced a basketball game or a football game. So another way to outreach, but also to help offset the cost of running the operation there. So stay tuned for that. Look for maybe some exciting news as early as next week. And we'd like to do maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 per summer if we're successful at it.
Is there a hockey game in there?
Yes. Oh, great question. Thanks for reminding me. So the Winter Classic, the NHL Winter Classic, this is the one that adds to my collection of gray hair. How do you keep a stadium plumbing system that's in the outside elements? Those concession stands and bathrooms are never meant to be permanently heated and all the pipes heated. How do you keep that alive after the last home game in November all the way to the second week of January? We're going to find out the answer to that question this year, apparently. So that's exciting to host that classic. Notre Dame, I think, is going to play Michigan the following weekend, because I think that's a Monday or Tuesday the NHL plays. We'll keep the ice alive through that period. We'll have local hockey. So people are going to be able to come and skate on it, that kind of thing. So it'll be a lot of fun. But that's one of those nerve-wracking ones that we've got upcoming. You've been terrific. Welcome home. We're glad you're here, and really hope you enjoy a wonderful weekend. Looks like we've got some nice weather for you for the next at least 48 hours maybe or so. So welcome back. Thank you.